Hello and welcome to the ESL UK Premiership. I am Falcone and today I'm joined by XL3N, who I think is preferred to be called Ben.
For the time being, at least. Yeah, very well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Congratulations, firstly, for being the first player to qualify for the finals. Are you excited to be going to Comic-Con and playing?
Yeah, very much so. It's one of the first events I would have played at a live event. I've participated at places like Insomnia, but I haven't got quite far enough to make it to the live stages. So, no, it'll be exciting and terrifying at the same time. But what we're going to be seeing today is the second person who's going to qualify to the top four finals. We've got GreenSheep against Danswf. Now, you've got their lineup, so you believe?
Yeah, absolutely. 6 different decks we're going to see played
by
these
variety
guys today. Dan decided to bring Warrior, Mage, Paladin, Priest. GreenSheep, Druid, Warrior, Paladin, Rogue. But Dan's Warrior has been banned. GreenSheep's Paladin has been banned, leaving us with Mage, Paladin, Priest on Dan's side and Druid, Warrior, Rogue on Sheep's side.
It's one of the greatest things about the Ongoro set right now is virtually every single class is not only playable, but has multiple iterations of playable decks. I think the only class that you can argue isn't quite viable right now is Warlock, and even then, Zoo isn't terrible. Every single class has multiple iterations. Even class like Paladin, you can go all the way from aggro to like fast but still control-y, mid-range, and all the way up to full-on control with N'Zoth. There's a huge variety of different options to play right now.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot, and as you say, each class does have several archetypes. Even Warlock, which is widely considered class number 9. It has Zoolock and it has Doomlock, which some people have been playing with some success.
Or Sifgalock, is that
That's
kind
another
of weird
name
kind
for
of
it. Yeah. Right now, looking at the first game, GreenSheep actually not bringing aggro. He's bringing Quest Rogue.
I think against the kind of decks he expects Dan's to bring, this is an incredibly strong deck. Any kind of mid-rangey deck where you have like Taunt Warrior, this deck just absolutely eats it for breakfast. And this start is incredible. Not only has he got the Novice Engineer, he's already got a second one that he's naturally drawn from his deck with 1 bounce effect already. Even without drawing the Novice Engineer, the Igneous Elemental completes 3 of the 4 necessary bounce effects, essentially, to complete the quest. It's a really strong start from Sheep.
Yeah, he's absolutely spoiled for choice, because if he chooses to, he could just play the second Novice Engineer next turn, bounce that back, and then he only needs 1 more bounce effect to complete the quest with Novice Engineer or Igneous Elemental, or not Igneous Elemental itself, but the Flame Elementals, as you were saying.
Quite. And Dan's going to actually get a potential read from here. The fact that he played the Novice Engineer and didn't immediately bounce it back should be a read that either GreenSheep just has nothing, or he's got another one in his deck, because Novice Engineer is one of the few cards that you really like to bounce back a lot because it lets you cycle through your deck. And seeing this Doomsayer tells me this is going to be RDU's list, as he's one of the only people I think who's still running Doomsayer in this list. It's a very unique play, but I know GreenSheep and RDU do practice a lot together, so that makes a lot of sense.
It does. Sosu was saying earlier today, just today while casting HGG, that you tend to find Doomsayers and Wisps together in that sort of list. I'm not sure if all of these cards fit together with Igneous Elemental. I don't. How well do you know RDU's list? I'm not sure what he'll have cut.
No, this is his list. So he won't have the Small Time Buccaneer because those kind of random cards. People have started...
Swashbuckler.
Sorry, quite. I'm a player. I don't know what the cards are called. I just know what they do. So the one that gives you random cards.
is the horrible one that got nerfed and is now trash.
Quite. Well, it's another 1/1, Pirate. But
that's true.
So the people have started to realize a random card isn't necessarily as strong. And I mean, who would have thought at the beginning of when we journey into the center of Ongoro that Wisp Ball and Stone Tusk Ball would make it into a deck together? But yeah, and not only does he have the Igneous Elemental, he's now got the Firefly to complement it. So he can actually complete the quest without using the Shadow Scepter tool, which some people might think, well, that's a bit wasteful. But what that means is it's another... almost certainly going to be 5 more damage to come down in a burst combo near the end of the game.
Yeah, on the flip side of that, though, GreenSheep's Igneous Elemental actually does have to be destroyed before he gets enough Flame Elementals to complete the quest. So Dan does have that going for him at least. He can just ignore it. Or even better, if he gets the chance, maybe he could play that Potion of Madness, steal the Igneous Elemental, and get the Flame Elementals himself.
Yes,
it seems unlikely, though.
It's one of those things where we've seen some players like backstabbing their own Igneous Elemental to trade it into a minion, or making sure they kill it off themselves. However, Dan's doesn't really have an option to do that. I mean, it could go to the point where he could potion of madness, and then Shadow would paint it himself.
Yeah,
But
right,
he doesn't
sure.
have that in hand right now. It's something you would absolutely do to draw two of those elementals away from GreenSheep.
So unfortunately, Dan has decided that's not a strategy he's going to be able to go ahead with, and he's just played Priest of the Feast. GreenSheep is now going to be able to trade the Ignis Elemental in and actually complete the quest this turn if he wants to. And now that's pretty scary if you're in Dan's position. Not only are you already a deck that's weak against Quest Rogue because you're a very controlly, very slow deck, but quests being complete on turn 5, that's not good.
Not at all. I mean, the one thing that Dan does have going in his favor is he doesn't have the preparation. That's the one card that can really, really throw you. I like the fact he might not. Sorry, he's going to Shadow Step probably something this turn because he hasn't actually quite completed it yet.
It's risky if he doesn't.
Yeah, I'm surprised he played the Novice Engineer. I thought he would have played the Youthful Brewmaster and use a Shadow Step later on to get more burst damage, because the Shadow Step obviously reduces the cost, rather than the Brewmaster, which kind of does the same thing, but costs 2 mana to do the same thing.
Well, he was hovering over the quest progress there. It's possible that he wasn't completely sure. Maybe he thought he had completed it and just got one of the numbers wrong there or something. Either way, this works out just fine. Next turn, he's going to be able to drop the Firefly for free, then play the Flame Elemental, and then activate the quest, which means he's going to be in a good position either way.
Yeah, the Vanish is going to prove very strong in this kind of matchup. It's one of those decks where Priest has a lot of very powerful cards, but they do tend to cost more mana. But on the flip side of that, Dan's has drawn probably the best card in this deck. Not only has he drawn one of them, he's drawn 2 Dragonfire Potions, which, whereas some of the other classes would deal damage to themselves by trying to clear the board, like the Fellfire Potion. Here, at least he gets to clear the entire board, and he doesn't get any face damage taken.
Yeah, so that is something going for Dan, at least. He's going to be able to get rid of everything a few times. The question is, how many times is enough to clear this board? Because GreenSheep is going to be able to just keep restocking. And now he's picked up the preparation you alluded to earlier. GreenSheep is actually able to put more minions on the board while completing the quest this time, although that might turn out badly for him because of the Dragonfire Potion. I guess Youthful Brewmaster is okay.
No, I mean, you can just set up... I can't quite set up Guaranteed Lethal, because he's got 15 charge damage from hand, going South Sea, Brewmaster, and Brewmastering it again. So he can push him down to 20. And if he does now play... I mean, it's a really awkward turn, because you kind of don't want the Priest of the Feast to survive, because it does live through the potion, and that means he's going to be starting to heal himself back up again.
Right. So the solvable lethal isn't quite going to happen in the same way that you would as a freeze mage. Not in this deck.
Not quite. What you really want to do is try and set up a lethal through something, say, like a Dragonfire Potion. Like if he drew, say, another bounce effect now, he would just win the game. I think you can prep the Mimic Pod right now. The prep isn't doing so much more throughout the rest of the game. You've got enough mana where you can play Vanish and, say, Wisp and a South Sea deckhand if he needs to. Speaking of Wisp,
there it is. And now there is quite a lot of damage coming through. I didn't consider
that. It was actually lethal with the patches last turn. If he didn't have the Priest of the Feast to heal him for 3 through the Dragonfire Potion.
Wow. Well, there you go. Dan doesn't quite realize it, but he'd saved himself just. Though time is running out. Dragonfire Potion going to come down almost definitely this turn.
I think that's a bit of a misstep, actually, from GreenSheep. He decided to play the Charger this turn rather than the Wisp. I know he doesn't get the 5 damage in this turn, but he's got a bounce effect in hand, which is going to be rendered useless after this Dragonfire Potion. He could have played the Wisp and had the same amount of pressure on that allows him to get more potential damage over the next few turns. That would have been lethal this turn if he had played the Wisp instead.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I agree with you. I was wondering at the time, but GreenSheep very, very good at playing aggressively. Maybe playing even too aggressively here, playing the charges and not giving yourself any way of holding on to them.
GreenSheep still wins. He can actually just play everything. He's seen both Dragonfire Potions, and he knows neither of them came from Shadow Visions, so he knows there's only ever this many copies in the deck. I'm not I'm trying to work out what he's trying to play around at this point, whether it's like double death, but even then, you'd still rather have the Youthful Brewmaster on the board. Maybe he's trying to wait for another card that benefits from the bounce effect. Like, but both Novice Engineers have already gone.
What can Dan do this turn? He can play Priest of the Feast, Shadow of Death. Is that his only option? I think it is.
It's pretty much the only thing he can do. He's getting rid of the bounce effect here. You can, yeah. I mean, in a way, it doesn't matter what you kill here. If he vanishes, then he can still play whatever he wants to. Oh, I'm getting this cast division as well.
You are. It's a little bit silly how accurate your calls are right now. GreenSheep doesn't seem bothered about that vanish, though. Just going to go ahead, clear out Priest of the Feast, and slowly but surely whittle Dan's health down to 9 now.
Yeah, I think the correct play here is to bounce back the Wisp and replay it as a 5/5. He can keep the vanish potentially to just whittle down something. Say these Wisp... Sorry. Let's suppose he plays a largish taunt. He can bump into it, and so the Wisp are low on health, vanish it, and then replay them so they kind of get healed back up again and continue this pressure. But as we can see, there's not really anything Dans can do. He can play the Netherspite Historian to just get any dragon to activate his Dragon OP to then try and get something from Sheep's deck. But I'm failing to think what Sheep could have. Because some of the only cards you actually want from the Rogue deck is something like Preparation. But that doesn't do anything with the hand. And that's just going to be the first game going to GreenSheep.
Dragon OP, by the way. Nice name for the card. Very accurate.
Well, he is the operative, and I mean, he's not quite so OP as he once was. He was kind of the deck-defining card. I mean, you could also argue he's the sole reason why you're still potentially playing Dragon Priest in this day and age.
I think so. Like a combination of him and Primordial Drake, yeah. But no, I just thought the name was very fitting. So, GreenSheep has now gotten a win with his Rogue.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. However, GreenSheep was going to get to that stage, he was incredibly favoured in that matchup. It's very, very rare for the Priest to get through. It has to have a really strong start where you can get Priest of the Feast to stay on board, and you do get those Primordial Drakes that can at least slow down the road until they just run out of cards, which GreenSheep was getting close to, but he was still in full control.
You see GreenSheep playing Warrior, and you just kind of automatically assume it's going to be Pirate Warrior. Are you surprised that we're seeing a quest here?
I believe at Insomnia, and I believe in the ESL the week before, he was also playing Taunt Warrior. When you classically think GreenSheep, you would automatically assume it would be Pirate Warrior, but there's obviously something speaking out to him that he thinks his deck is just better. Maybe because people expect the Pirate Warrior, it kind of throws them off for a loop.
I mean, I've got to admit, I definitely didn't expect to see this quest deck, especially as in the last week or so, its popularity has been decreasing. I'm sure we're seeing more Pirate Warriors, at least on the ladder at the moment, than we are Quest Warriors. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, Dan with his, looks like a N'Zoth Paladin to me.
Yeah, given the Devilsaur egg in hand, we can assume this is going to be a N'Zoth. And we also saw him play this list, or I assume it's the same list, on Monday.
Right, and it's also, was Shoop not running this list at DreamHack, or a very similar list to this, at least?
I believe so. I believe so. This might well be his list. We've seen, it's kind of funny, whenever you see Last Hero Standing, you see a much more diverse range of decks. Whereas Conquest is more about playing decks that can win against anything.
Yep.
Last Hero Standing, you can have more polarizing matchups where you just want something that can hard counter another deck. Classically, you'd have Control Warrior for the Freeze Mage, that kind of thing. And now N'Zoth Paladin always kind of shows up, particularly at DreamHack Austin. It's shown up twice in a row. It was the first time Chucky said he's ever played Priest when he then actually won. Wow. So you can have these really diverse decks, and it's one of those things that kind of captures the imagination of the Hearthstone community for a little while until people realize it's bad on ladder and they go back to playing Pirate Warrior.
Okay, 3 interesting choices here. Grime Street Protector and Wicked
I'd argue
Flame
2
Burn
inches.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Choices.
I was about to get there. Ozarok is interesting, it's a legendary. That's about where the intrigue ends.
Another legendary. That's 3 times better and costs 3 times less.
Yeah.
Approximately 3 times better, it might be more. Yeah, Burn Bristle is just an incredibly strong card in this deck. Not only does it require 2 swings into it. The fact you can play it alongside the buffs in your deck, like the Steed, means you get to heal up for even more than its original health total.
I
But
very much liked this pick, though.
Yeah, it does. He's clearly looking at the late game. There's a lot of times where it's kind of like a stalemate. You both just have a wall of taunts. Like GreenSheep can have a curator, you can have a, curator on your side of the board, and you're not doing anything. All of a sudden, you give that thing Divine Shield, and then you can bump in and then kind of progress the board and kind of bait out the brawls, and then you can save your board for later on for like your exhaust turns.
Yeah, you've played a lot of Arena, right, Ben?
I used to when I was poor. And
when you were poor. Well, tell me, does your Arena experience tell us that giving 2 minions Divine Shield is pretty good?
It's fairly good. I think Trump's assessment would be pretty good. It's one of those cards that you think it looks incredible, but it never had enough time to do it.
Yeah.
In a matchup where you know you're playing against Taunt Warrior, you have the time to get it. The fact is, it's a 7-mana 6/6 taunt just for the body, which is kind of priced at about 6 mana anyway. So anything on top of that is just worth it, and because it's essentially a free card, you can take your time with it. And this Devil's Sort Egg is kind of like a bit of protection from the brawl, or at least would force a weapon swing into it first.
Yeah, that's not so bad if GreenSheep has to do that.
Yeah, at least it's a minion that requires some damage taken to it. So it's kind of a distraction.
But I don't mind this either, just totally ignoring it. And there's no urgency in clearing this board now. I like just dropping one of those 5-drops.
Absolutely.
The one with more stats seems good.
The issue comes not this turn, but the turn after the magical turn 6, where he wants to play the Steeds on this target. It's a bit like in Zoo when you had the Nerubian Egg. It's quite a formidable minion because it's a prime target for buffs. In the Zoo deck, you had your Direwolf Alphas and Power Overwhelmings. In this, you have your Blessing of Kings and your Steeds, which you want to buff up. And having a target that your opponent doesn't want to kill is perfect for that. So it's a really kind of interesting inclusion. And some people might just think the Twilight Summoner is just better. It's a 1/1, you can kill it off yourself. But when there's so much Priest around at the moment that has the Potion of Madness,
right,
it can then just steal it, and then the Priest gets to steal the 5/5. This is still a 0/3 minion, so Priest get rid of it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I hadn't actually thought of that, how the Twilight Summoner is so much weaker to Potion of Madness, and just how prevalent Potion of Madness is at the moment. Dan's hand is huge. His infinite value train ended when he had to get a redemption from that hydrologist, although he still does have a getaway coder available to him.
Yeah, I think he's going to want to try and save that for a little bit later on, particularly as you have some incredibly strong taunt minions in the deck. I mean, the big man himself, Tyrion, there's nothing greater than trying to get a Tyrion coder back to your hand to replay again.
Even using it on the Discover a Taunt Minion card can be pretty strong, right? It just gets you a guaranteed extra Taunt Minion later on. It could still be a second Tyrion.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things, you can play it early enough when you have Hydrologist. Dan's drew both of his Hydrologists, so he had a really chance of having those ones bounce back. It's harder when you start playing the hero powers, and it's interesting, we're actually seeing a really quite early quality Consecrate. But it makes total sense when you look at Dan's hand when he wants to be able to play minions like the Grimstreet Protector or Curator next turn.
He could also be trying to make GreenSheep think that he has Sunkeeper Tarim in hand. Because imagine how strong Tarim would be right now.
Yeah, that would be absolutely backbreaking. It's one of those plays where when you have the board, it's kind of worth doing it. Now that both players have actually drawn the Curator, that one thing that they both know for sure is that they both have a copy of Primordial Drake in their hand. I'm just trying to work it out. Is his hand full? He's got 9 cards, does he? Yeah, so I was just making sure he wasn't going to overdraw next turn. So he's just going to try and evaluate what's going to happen next turn. He's probably going to try and bump in both of these 2 wants to play around the Primordial Drake, which I just mentioned. You know, GreenSheep has it 100% in his hand because he drew 2 cards.
Yep.
In
so
fact,
unless there's a random Murloc in there, then he's probably got a Primordial Drake.
In fact, he's guaranteed to have it in his hand because even if he doesn't draw a card, that means he already has it in his hand.
Yep.
So it's one of those things on turn 8 when you see a curator, it's one of the few things in Hearthstone where you can guarantee they have Primordial Drake. Unless,
There could be a Deathwing.
okay, that's true. I think there's fewer decks where we see Deathwing, but you're not wrong. You're not wrong. It could be a Deathwing.
But it's still like, it's like you said, it's like 80-90% that there's a Primordial Drake there. So you definitely play around it, as you were saying.
Yeah, the only other times where you see a card that commonly being drawn is when you play against any Pirate Warrior and they always have Nuzol's First Mate on turn 1.
Yeah, that's also 100%.
Pretty much. I really like this play from GreenSheep. He's kind of set up a play against the Primordial Drake, like I mentioned, about the Acolytes of Pain, but this Kodo, either target is going to hit was going to pick up immense value. This is probably the best option.
I think it's the worst one, because
Really?
GreenSheep's starting to run out of cards in his hand, which sounds a bit silly, but when you compare the hand sizes, I wonder if that's just one way that Dan could have controlled this matchup by preventing GreenSheep from drawing into more of his taunts and more of his threats.
It's kind of like you give your opponent one card, but you kill a 5-drop for absolutely nothing.
Right.
And you give him no armor. And at this point, you're kind of getting ahead on the board. I think it's worth killing the Ali Armor Smith and trading one card, because you even get to keep the Curator alive. So, I mean, either outcome was not bad by any means, and it's up for debate which is the better outcome. But yeah, this is getting kind of awkward for GreenSheep now, because there's no way of him getting through to the Devil's Saw, which implies after a brawl, there would be at least a 5/5 and another minion that survives.
Yeah, the only thing that is looking good for GreenSheep is that, as we just saw then, he's one taunt away from completing the quest. And at that point, Sulfuras Brawl Hero Power actually becomes a pretty good play.
It almost always does, but like I mentioned, there are going to be a couple of minions flying around after the Devil's Saw egg pops as well. Mm-hmm. The one thing that I don't think a lot of people mention is just the fact that Paladin's hero power pseudo counters or pseudo matches the Die Insect hero power. Just summoning a random dude kind of mitigates the control damage from the warrior. Of course, they have cards like the Primordial Drake and Brawl to try and control that RNG to some extent, but you always have that hero power to play alongside some other minions from your hand. I think that's one of the advantages that Paladin tends to have.
Yeah, well, Lorinda and me casted a very similar game, a Control Paladin versus a Taunt Warrior last week, and he said right at the start, this matchup all comes down to the Brawl, because that's the way the Warrior beats the Paladin hero power.
It really does.
And lo and behold, that matchup came down to the Brawl, and the Warrior took it away in the end. Just because he saved the Brawl until the last possible moment where he could kind of guarantee the win.
So this turn is getting quite awkward, particularly as you now see 2 secrets up, and I'm not sure if he's been able to test for some of them. So this is probably the closest turn you're going to get a really good Dirty Rat and Brawl. The turn after that, even if you then pop the Dragon Egg, you can go Primordial Drake.
Wait a second.
And
who needs to play Brawl?
This happened yesterday, actually, I think against Ting Ting, where he automatically queued up Dirty Rat Brawl and didn't see that he pulled a Doomsayer out.
Oh, no, that's
so he just used the Brawl. It wasn't against Ting Ting, I apologize. It was a match I played on ladder where they just automatically queued it up.
Right.
So he didn't need to do anything. And
you're just trying to besmirch Ting Ting's name.
Just a button. Just a button. GreenSheep should never hero power here, just in case it hits a Doomsayer.
Yeah.
Good. There's some people just think they might as well try and take the damage, but yeah, I like
It's only a 1 in 8, right? It's a 1 in 8 for a good outcome and a 1 in 8 for a bad outcome. So are you a gambling man, Ben? GreenSheep clearly isn't right now.
I play Hearthstone, of course I am, Dan.
That Grime Street Protector, though, not looking so bad right now. I don't mind giving the 5/5 a Divine Shield.
Yeah, I think you can play another minion first. You either hero power or you might as well play the Stonehill Defender. Just having these minions. Yeah, you can actually go for another one. The Grime Street Protector goes up a lot in value when it can soak, when these Divine Shields can soak up a Die Insect hero power.
Yeah, GreenSheep almost has to Brawl here because he loses so much time otherwise. I guess he could play Primordial Drake, but that doesn't really make that much progress. And then when GreenSheep Brawls now, he gets punished later on because Dan plays the second Grime Street.
Yeah, it's really difficult, isn't it? You can argue you can play the Primordial Drake because it does remove the Divine Shields.
So I guess you could play Drake, hit the Sulfuras into the Discover, and then play the hero power.
One weird thing to mention is because the Doomsday was pulled by the Dirty Rat, it was then killed on Danswf's turn, which means the Dragon Egg didn't get, or the Devil Sword didn't get to attack. And it also meant neither of the secrets were active. Now, they're both still live at the moment. So if GreenSheep does brawl, I think he's got a fairly hard read that one of these is at least a redemption, which is even more stuff to come back the next turn.
Okay. So
It's one of those turns where you feel like 70 seconds is not enough, and you can analyze turns for minutes and minutes afterwards. So what
that's probably where he wanted it to go, the face.
Yeah, I think so. What he's trying to do here is try and get a little bit more from Dan before he plays a brawl.
Yeah.
And then the turn after that, he can go with the Primordial Drake and Sleep with the Fishes, where he can do 5 damage spread across the entire board.
Jeez, he just wants Dan to overextend as much as possible. Though Dan probably doesn't feel too much need to overextend. He's just picked up the Tyrion there. Pretty big draw, but not even necessary right now.
It's not necessary, really, but it is one of the only minions I almost feel comfortable playing because the Death Rattle is so good for you. You're suddenly getting the Ashbringer, and that can really threaten GreenSheep's life total. It's 15 damage over the next 3 turns, which is essentially dead when you've got like the Consecrate and just 1 minion to swing in as well. It does have the True Silver, which he could equip, which is probably better. Does that get something out of your hand? Because it's actually quite full. I'm fairly sure the 5/5 is going to get put into the Diehorn this turn, just to make the use of the Divine Shield, but it looks like he's preferring to keep that Divine Shield alive. If he's going to use the Outdoor, this is definitely the nice line to take.
Okay, well,
I don't think he should swing into the 1/4, by the way. Yeah, it's more important to keep that Divine Shield around. So this is Dan trying to make having to make GreenSheep have to brawl this turn.
yeah, and GreenSheep doesn't really have many other options. Primordial Drake isn't doing much at all. It's getting rid of the Divine Shield and the 1/1, and that's about it.
He has to keep the Primordial Drake to play with the Sleep with the Fishes. Later on in the game, if he draws his 1 Whirlwind or 2 Ghouls, then he can play one of those cards and double Sleep with the Fishes, which can clear almost every board that Dan is likely to play. As he knows that can come up later, this might be as good a turn as any to play Brawl.
Okay.
Which
just as you called, GreenSheep plays the Brawl. The 5/5 with Divine Shield dies. That's very important.
Okay, we're going to see a lot of pretty animations going off here. So he gets the 5/5 back to his hand.
So he'll also get the 5/5 resummoned.
He will, because that was technically the first minion that was summoned at the start. It's not a bad initiative for Dan to have going this turn forward. The Devil Sword's a little bit awkward to get out of your hand because it is a 5-mana 5/5. You don't get that reduced cost of it being in its egg. To the face.
Okay. GreenSheep's hero power doing as GreenSheep does best. And there's no healing in Dan's hand right now, which suddenly seems pretty relevant.
It really does. He only has this True Silver, which allows him to go back up to 15. Still means he's going to be threatened by 2 hero powers. We might have to see this Primordial Drake come down just to get rid of the Divine Shield and the Devil Sword itself. Still not perfect. It does allow him to get a 50-50 with the die-in set, which either kills a Tyrion or sets Dan low enough to die to another hero power the turn after. This is probably the optimal line to take because he can now swing with the War Axe. And the Ashbringer isn't actually doing that much at the moment anyway because there's a massive dragon in the way.
Yeah, it's looking really good for GreenSheep now. What was looking like a very bad game for him earlier, it looked like Dan was really pulling ahead back during the Stampeding Kodo into Ali Armorsmith turn. Now, we're just seeing the strength of the Warrior quest, I think. It seems to have swung GreenSheep back into this game along with that Brawl.
The Brawl alongside the hero power in combination is a very formidable threat. It means the Paladin, as wide as it can go, you kind of get damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you stay narrow, then GreenSheep can pick apart minion by minion with the hero power. If you go wide, then you overcommit and then you lose to Brawl. So what we're going to see Dan do is equality first, which means his Pyromancer stays alive and he can play the steed on it. He gets a swing with the Ashbringer as well, so this is coming down to the bitter end. He
It
does have a
is.
number of taunts, but the execute is now live. He could argue. I'm trying to work out if there's any other way around playing a steed the turn before without having a damaged minion, but I think this is the only way possible. So I
It's the
think
sort
you
of
use the
play that a lot
execute
of people would have missed, actually, the play Dan just made. You know, the equality first, then the pyromancer, then the spell.
Yeah, you
Like,
see that sometimes with hydrologists now, because you have these kind of random spells in your hand, that you
yeah.
can go a quality pyro and then a spell to clear off
Right,
the
right.
minions beforehand. So I like the execute first. You're not picking up much more value from it right now, so you might as well guarantee the clear on it. And the fact he cleared this Stegodon as well leaves a clear path for GreenSheep to swing with his weapon again. Unfortunately, he puts Dan only down to 9, which isn't quite enough to kill him the next turn. I doubt he's going to pick up a Mega Taunt. It doesn't quite work in the same way. Um,
Yeah. There's no double taunt, unfortunately. Death Rattle seemed like a pretty good choice there. Then again, 1-1 would have played around the Ashbringer.
it would have, and it meant he would have taken more damage. It's very awkward. I think the 1-1s allow for more potential damage to get through. He could also be thinking the 1-1s could be more relevant with double sleep with the fishes in hand with no activators.
Oh,
He
that's
could
true.
run the 1-1s into 2 different targets and then, double 6 and do 6 damage to each of them. I believe that's what his thought process was.
Oh man, so now Dan is going to get to go ahead and play Ragnaros Lightlord, putting himself up to 20. Hits him with the Ashbringer, goes down to 15. Not in that order. First he goes down to 7, then up to 15. That way around. But unfortunately, GreenSheep still has that hero power. And the 1-1s.
Yeah.
So
I'm trying to work out if it was necessary for Dan to hit the weapon this turn. It's really interesting.
I think we're going to see an executed Rag Lightlord here, and then just the hero power going face. Stonehill Defender, wow. GreenSheep just going as wide as possible.
Yeah, I think he's trying to set up as much of a taunt wall in the way as possible for the Ashbringer. Even though they're 1-4s, they still stop an Ashbringer.
Yeah, I was wondering about the why he didn't pick Ali Armorsmith, but I guess that's all it is. Just once the Ashbringer's dealt with one of the 1-4s,
Yeah.
the other 1-4 is still going to be there perfectly healthy. And then GreenSheep also just got extra taunts in his hand.
Yeah, I really like the use of the execute again here. Making sure you can guarantee get value out of the execute before you hero power rather than taking the 50-50. It's kind of a counterintuitive play. You sometimes think you want to hero power first to make the most value. You can save an execute for later. But right now it's a face race, and GreenSheep really needs to get this damage to Dan's life total.
If Dan had one more cheap spell in hand, this would just be lethal. With Pyromancer plus, say, a Secret, plus Consecration, and then the Ashbringer goes face, that would be the game. But unfortunately for Dan, his hand just isn't quite lining up, and now that Grime Street Protector is sitting there doing nothing at the moment.
Yeah, his hand's really awkward. He doesn't have, because of the mana cost being 7, it's really awkward that he doesn't have enough space to taunt or to give Divine Shields to 2 separate minions. And this is just going to say it's not
lethal.
It is lethal because he can put the weapon into the 1-1 and then he's got the guaranteed hit with the die inset. That's a very well circumvented.
Yeah, very nice spot from GreenSheep there. The double sleep with the fishes, not used in the way that you typically expect it to be, but now Dan very much on the back foot, as all GreenSheep needs to do is win with his Druid.
Yeah, it's a really interesting game because you tend to think it comes down to the brawls, but GreenSheep only drew 1 copy of it, and he never got to play the Sleep with the Fishes with the Ravaging Ghouls, which are pivotal to this matchup traditionally, but he didn't draw either of them, so he had to make the most of the cards he was dealt, and he kind of made the most of it. Now we're going to see GreenSheep probably in his element playing aggro Druid.
Right, here we go. All this time he's been having to play, control-y decks, mid-range decks, combo or rogue decks or whatever. Now it's time for him to play what he likes. But Dan with the Dragon Priest. Now this isn't a horrible matchup for him.
It's not at all. Depends really down to how the priest starts. The druid starts are traditionally quite consistent because you have so many 1-drops in your deck. But Dan's WF already has a 1-drop and a 2-drop. Just having a 1/3 Northshire on the board can contest a lot of the cards that Druid is likely to play. The Enchanted Raven is one of the very few that is actually likely to survive. And this hand is brilliant for GreenSheep. He can play Enchanted Raven on turn 1 and get out an incredibly early Finger than Flying Star, which he can then buff up the turn after. This is looking incredibly strong.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to agree with you about how good Dan's hand looked. You know, he's got the Primordial Drake as well for later. If he gets to that point in the game, then that card can single-handedly help the priest
Sorry,
stabilize.
what's turn 8? I'm not sure if Druids have ever seen that.
GreenSheep probably doesn't see turn 8 very often at all because he's usually won by then. And this is going to be an example of that happening, I think. Finger on turn 2 is it's just a bit silly, really.
It's really interesting mulligan from GreenSheep. There's a lot of you can tell he's played this deck an awful lot. I don't think many people would ever throw back the Argent Squire, but he had the Innovate. He's clearly looking for some of these more crucial cards. Say like the Finger, there might be a Bitside Hydra, some of these really powerful cards where he wants to get the Fledgling, the 3/3 that gets adapt. He's obviously looking for those cards, and I think it comes down to somebody like GreenSheep who's had enough experience with these decks to know exactly what to go for.
Now, GreenSheep has a few different ways of doing this. He could play Patches and the Ravasaur Run, get the adapt, trade in Patches, and then trade in Finger. Or I'd say more likely, he could play either of the minions plus Mark of the Lotus and hit Finger in to...
He could also just Hero Power, play the Finger, and then mark the Lotus.
That's good too. Yeah, that's good too.
But then again, you're not developing so much on the board. I think that's slightly better because then you get to keep the Patches for later on to play with a run.
It's not so bad. Like you develop 2 extra Murlocs and buff them both.
It's really awkward sequencing. It might just be straight up better to play the Runt and mark with that. It's really awkward. It'd be interesting to see what GreenSheep does next turn. However, for Danswf, there's really nothing he can do. I think he just has to play the 2/3 to play something on the board. He's going to have to contest a number of Murlocs coming out next turn.
Well, I have a feeling that GreenSheep is going to make short work of this board one way or another. Charging bluegills are about to appear.
Yeah, now that he's drawn the Enchanted Raven, I think you can play both the 1-drops in your hand and play Mark of the Lotus now. Oh, he is going to do it this way. So he's going to sacrifice the Patches to then buff 2 other minions. This also
it means if there's 2 bluegills, then he can make the trade easily enough. Not that that was a concern. 1 bluegill, 1 war leader. Probably exactly what GreenSheep wants to see most of the time here. And now
I think he's going face here. I don't think there's anything a 1/3 is going to do that's going to threaten your board.
Dan wishes that he had his own Innovate now so that he could play Dragonfire Potion.
Might do next turn.
Yeah.
He might do off the operative, but I think by that time it's taking far too much damage. And this Finger is going to pick up 2 more Murlocs because there's no Shadow of Death in hand.
I guess Dan just has to suicide the Cleric to prevent that from happening. Though that doesn't feel good.
I mean, you're then just taking about 15 damage. I'm not going to count, but you're not taking much damage. He's going to Hero Power. What can he possibly draw? Because he can't even play Shadow of Death.
Pain could get rid of Raven. I mean, that's the best, right? That's the best case scenario. This is not
like a best case scenario. I'll be honest with you. It's actually I was going to say it's a fairly nice play to suicide off the Northshire, but
I think he has to. Because there's so much extra damage on the board. Like an extra War Leader buffs up the 2 minions already there, buffs up the next Bluegill a little bit. I don't think he had a choice but to trade that in.
Yeah, I mean, the trading in also theoretically sets up for a Dragonfire Potion removal type thing. But the Mark of Yasiraj is going to allow GreenSheep to not only secure 2 more extra damage, allows him to draw further through his deck, which is really important. If there is some sort of removal, I can't think what, maybe like an Organize Soul Priest and Circle Healing, that he can play like a living mana and then fill the board up again.
GreenSheep's not playing around that, Ben. 19 damage just being pushed to the face. And now he's saying, Dan, what have you got? How are you going to stop me? Looks like GreenSheep is going to be going through to the ESL UK Prem finals.
Yeah, GreenSheep has had a really he's had a struggle to get through. He's had a few rescheduled games because it's conflicted with other events such as flying to the Bahamas and Austin, Texas to come back from DreamHack.
I don't know if you can be sympathetic for him being at the Bahamas, sipping tequilas or whatever. He's, I'm sure he was having a fine time over there.
I'm sure he was, but it's meant that some of his games had to be lost, so he had to fight through a tougher bracket. Where, like weirdly enough, the 0-1 bracket early on had people like Ball Control and Cypher and Jambray, and it might have been tougher than the kind of the winners bracket at the time. But he's forced his way through, and he's beaten Danswf, who's also been doing reasonably well in this tournament as well. So yeah, we got our second guaranteed player through to the live finals.
Yep, Dan gonna have to fight a little bit harder to get through. There is still some hope for him, but GreenSheep very much proving himself as an all-star of the UK right now. Bahamas, Global Games, and now finals of the ESL UK Prem. What a star.
Yeah, so because Dan beat Duncan on Monday, he's kind of through to another stage further in the lower brackets. So I'm gonna just send Dan a quick photo that has the brackets on it. If you bear with me one moment, so we can have a look at the bracket for next week. So continuing on Monday is going to be the lower bracket for this final, where we establish the next two players who are going to be playing at MCM in London. We're going to have Ness versus Mysterious and Duncan versus Leroy. Hello Leroy is so far the only player who's still in the tournament who has been at both of the other live finals. So he's going to be fighting tooth and nail to try and make this a third season in a row where he can come forth.
Right, sorry, I'm just trying to get the image up on screen, but OBS is being a little bit difficult at the moment.
Okay, so after Ness and Mysterious have worked out the victor of that match, they will be playing Ting Ting. No, they won't. I do apologise. They will be playing the loser of this match, which will be Danswf. So Ness or Mysterious will play Danswf, and then Duncan and Leroy will play, and they will go up against Ting Ting.
Right, there we go. Got it up. A little bit late, but there you go. So Ben, what do you think? You looking forward to having to play against GreenSheep in the finals?
Yeah, so that's guaranteed.
Are you going to take him?
The thing is, yeah, I think I've got a good chance. I'm the only player who's undefeated in Season 3. I've not lost a single match. So it'd be nice if I could keep that record going.
Well, that is about it from us. But yeah, thanks one more time, Ben. I appreciate having you on to cast this with me. Congratulations to GreenSheep. And
Thank you,
yeah, Ben, we'll see you again in the finals.
I'll see you there.